Welcome to today's episode of the Everyday Leader podcast. Matt and I are super excited to bring Ben Lawson to you and really let him share his incredible story and journey and how he overcame and battled back from cancer, and largely attributes that to how he took care of his personal health and his personal fitness. And we're very excited to also share the lessons around leadership he learned from his time in coaching and training others in the personal fitness space.
Welcome to the Everyday Leader podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Welcome to the Everyday Leader podcast. Matt and I are super excited to have Ben Lawson with us here today. A little bit about Ben, and then we'll let him speak. He is going to be the subject or the star of Stronger Than a Storm documentary that's going to be coming out. I'll let him share a little bit about what that is. He's also a cancer survivor, a U.S. Army veteran, a fitness coach, competitive bodybuilder, a husband and father to 2 children. And he just happens to be someone I've been sending shirtless photos to for the last 6 months, and had a big impact. And the reason why he's been my fitness coach this last 6 months, and big impact on me. So was really excited to bring him on and share a little bit about his journey in the health space, how he's a leader for others. And we're just super excited to have you today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was wondering why you were sending me those shirtless photos. So I was like, maybe I could coach you or something. I guess you're going to anyway. So it kind of worked out really well.
Totally. So if you're a new listener, part of what we like to discover with people is their journey around leadership, what they've learned along the way, how they've helped others. I guess, Ben, maybe more than anything, we first met at a conference earlier this year and heard you speak and heard you share your story. Could you share a little bit about that journey with your health and overcoming cancer, and tell our listener a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So essentially, kind of, very long story short, was a pretty healthy guy, competed several times with fitness coaching for a long time, Army veteran. And when I was about 29, I started to feel kind of sick, felt a little off, weird symptoms here and there. And it was March of 2020. So it's kind of wrapped up in the pandemic with, what was going on in the hospitals and the ER. So I was a little hesitant to go in, but I knew something was off. Ended up going into the ER, walked in on my own 2 feet and left, in a much different way. Essentially what happened is they took, blood tests and all sorts of other stuff, and your white blood count should be about 10,000. Mine was at 362,000. Looking back, they were just kind of like, we haven't really seen many people walk in that way, not in the middle of a heart attack or a stroke. So it turns out I was in the middle of having a stroke, just didn't know it yet. But essentially there in the ER, they diagnosed me with acute myeloid leukemia, which is a blood cancer, something extremely rare for a 29-year-old healthy male. So it was very much out of the blue, a huge shock, for someone who was into competitive bodybuilding, felt indestructible. I was actually, very strong and all that good stuff. I got airlifted to a cancer center, and the next week was anything that could go wrong felt like it was going wrong. It was hell. It was insane. It started off with, like I said, a brain hemorrhage, which was like a form of a stroke. Had pneumonia, my heart started to fail. Had to have surgery on my neck for a lymph node. And ultimately, my lung capacity kept dropping and I had to be intubated. And before that, I literally sent a goodbye text to my loved ones because, I thought there was no way that I was going to make it through it. So when I woke up 3 days later, I was very grateful, very excited. And I happened to be about 44 pounds lighter. I lost a ton of weight in that time. And I couldn't walk on my own strength. It took a little bit to build that back up, but I made the goal to compete in bodybuilding again while I was there in the hospital. I didn't question it. And I kind of think that that goal kind of helped propel me to ultimately what happened, which was 2 years later, almost exactly. I was able to compete again while I was in remission. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll share some of the links so people can see, but man, the physical transformation you've gone both directions, like
Yeah.
just incredible.
Yeah, I had a reverse transformation, of course, from being someone in, like I said, good shape, about 220, 225 pounds down to 180 something, and then back up to like 230. And then I stepped on stage about 215, pretty lean. So yeah, it was a roller coaster, but it was a good goal to hit.
Wow, that is wild, Ben. So I know a lot of times in society, in the world, when we hear the word leadership, talk about leadership, we associate it with like leading other people. And one of the things that we really believe is that leadership starts with leading yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about your realizations, or where you found like the courage or strength or whatever to lead yourself out of such a dark place?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people kind of ask me that, and it really goes back to the way I was raised, the examples I had, the leaders I looked up to. Even far back, I always looked up to my father, who's a former U.S. Army Ranger, Special Forces, someone I really idolized. And I was his last of five. There's a huge age gap, so I was much younger, but I always remember hearing those stories and just seeing how my dad was, definitely a talker, but kind of stoic in that way, very strong, charitable too, and just someone I could really look up to. And I always had that kind of example. And, with that came all the action movies and the Rambos and the Arnolds and the physique. So definitely that example in leadership, but really just the mindset was the biggest thing I gathered as a child, because it started, with not being the first pick in sports. And that was something, for whatever reason, that just flipped. And it was kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, you don't want to pick me? Watch this. And then I became, much better at sports, and it really flipped into fitness and ultimately cancer. So really started, as far back as I can remember.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's actually something Drew and I have talked about, and I'd love your thoughts about this, Ben, that like, is there some sort of healthy motivation involved in what you just said? Like, oh, you're not going to pick me? Okay, watch this. Like, Drew and I have had a lot of conversations. Like, is that a healthy motivation to have some kind of like a little bit of a chip on your shoulder type of thing? Would love your thoughts, like how you've seen that work or maybe not work at different times through your experiences.
Yeah, of course. I think that same thing. It's like, is this a good or a bad thing? And I think the answer is both. It can be crazy. And, you even watch like The Last Dance and see Michael Jordan. It's like that dude would just make up something because he needed the chip to be the greatest of all time. I don't know if that to that extent's healthy, but I certainly think it works on the personality of the individual. But for me, it's like I like when someone doubts me. It's like, okay, all right, you don't think I can compete again? You don't think I can, hit these numbers? All right, watch this. And I'll silently work in the darkness and make it happen.
Did that happen at all? Like in the hospital, did you get any of that too? To have doctors or nurses? I mean, I don't know if did you share that was a goal? Like what did people say to you, or what?
I kind of shared it on social media. I definitely was vocal about like, I'm going to be back up on stage, like just wait. There was, doctors, my doctor particularly, a few of them were supportive, but you could tell they're a little reserved, like, please be careful, like don't hurt yourself. But a lot of it was just even physical therapists, just like, you need to not focus on lifting weights so much. You need to focus on cardio, these times. And meanwhile, I'm in the middle of cancer, chemo treatment. And when I recovered, I would be deadlifting, 400 pounds. And I'm just like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. So it's working. So I got this. Like, you know what I mean?
Ben, I've heard you talk a little bit about this, but about your belief maybe around your recovery and the weightlifting and how there's maybe not a lot of data out there that shows it, but you share some of just your thoughts on that and just the importance of like what weight and strength training can do for people.
Yeah, of course. I think at the time, especially there's not a lot of people recovering specifically from leukemia who are weightlifters. There's just not a lot of controlled research because there's not a lot of, people, especially young adults. It's usually children under the age of 6 or elderly people, 65 plus who are diagnosed with that kind of blood cancer. So just not a lot. But what we do know, and there is starting to see some research that I've seen that shows muscle is actually very cancer protective. So a lot of it comes down to maybe we're not as obese as we think we are. Maybe we're just more under muscled than we are. And I know Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, I've heard I think even wrote a book kind of about this and talked a little bit about the cancer stuff. But I remember seeing that and I was just like, yes, that's exactly what my thoughts were the whole time. And since there isn't that research, the doctors can't be like, you need to be lifting weights 3 times a week, deadlifting and squatting and bench pressing, because there's just not the research. So they can't tell you that. But they did say, my doctor specifically told me they would have meetings about the patients on the floor, at least weekly, or I'm sure every morning they, said, so-and-so is experiencing this, so-and-so, just so everyone's on the same page. But one thing they would say is, we're seeing really good results for you, and we're all blown away how well you're recovering. So I certainly believe there's got to be something to that. First, being in shape in the first place, having a lot of muscle mass and having that protection, so to speak, and then having, the ability, drive, and knowledge to get it back. I think all of that put together with a goal in mind certainly helps me recover faster than the average person. I have to believe that, right?
Wow, that is so good. What was that you said? That maybe as a society we're not obese, we're just mostly under muscled. That's so good.
Yes.
Let's start a movement to instead of
Lift
fighting
weight.
obesity, we're going to become adequately muscled.
Yeah. Keep your dad bod. Just get strong. That's what is most important, I feel like.
Well, Ben, share a little bit about just your professional journey. I know you're kind of going through a new change in what you're doing, and would love to hear what you've been doing, what you're getting ready to be doing or currently doing now. And then, after you can explain that, we'd love to dive in some of what you've learned about leadership with that.
Of course. Yeah. So essentially, I've loved exercising, working out, the fitness space ever since I graduated high school and realized I didn't want to continue with any of the sports I was doing past high school. And so I needed something to give me the competitiveness that I experienced with sports and just kind of keep me occupied and active. So I started with mixed martial arts, really enjoyed that. And that was before it was really popular. Now I feel like it's getting a lot more mainstream, but it was something I've always enjoyed. And then when I did that, I realized I wasn't as strong as I wanted to be. And then obviously I always had the goals of the guys I watched idolize and grow up, like I said, the Arnold, the Rambos, all that. And so I started focusing more on the fitness side. And once I saw results, I was like, okay, there's something to this. I really enjoy this. And even though I wasn't competing against someone, it was like a competition against myself. And I loved to see the results. So I put that into practice, and then kind of it was just like, I want to be a personal trainer. I want to, maybe own a gym, who knows? But I started eventually working as a personal trainer in a box gym. Did that for a while, joined the Army because I was also like, I don't want to go into debt to go to school. So we'll figure something out. And then near the end of my military career, I started getting more on social media and realized that there was an avenue to do online coaching. So I started an online coaching business. And, it's funny, the first weekend I opened it up, there was, essentially zero investment. I just created a website, very cheap. And 2 people bought like this program from me. I made $150 the first weekend, and I was like, I'm going to be a millionaire. This is the greatest business of all time. I'm going to do this forever. So obviously, slowed down, and there's been a whole bunch of ups and downs. But I grew it to a point where, I was doing pretty well, and in that space, it's very competitive. So I was pretty happy with things, but ultimately just kind of get burnt out with social media and online coaching. So recently got my real estate license and just got with a company selling new homes. So we've transitioned things, and I'm going to take a lot from what I learned, especially with sales and working with people, and applying it to something new. So really excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we like to talk a lot about leadership, and part of our core beliefs is that a leader really helps somebody get to where they can't get to by themselves, or see what they can't see by themselves, or really get what they want at the end of the day. And which is ultimately why I started working with you. I reached some plateaus in my physical health, and one thing we talk a lot about is mindset, but maybe just as important, if not more important, is the language that surrounds that. And one thing that I've found interesting working with you is some of the language and the way you speak about things in the health world that I find is different, especially, I mean, all of you can scroll on social media and there's just so much like bad information around health out there. But yeah, could you talk a little bit, Ben, about how you've been able to help people change their mindset, and maybe even change the way they speak about their health, and some of the language you use that has replaced maybe traditional language out there around health?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious what kind of language.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious.
You've told me not to say cheat meals.
Yeah. Okay.
Untracked meals.
Yep.
I shared with you recently, because I've lost a ton of weight, not trying to make this about me, but I'm down quite a bit. Some before Ben, even more after. And goal was to get a 6-pack with Ben. I'm pretty much there now, which is awesome. And you said something to me the other day. You may not even have thought much about this, but I told you, like, I feel like I've got this extra skin. You told me to like look at it as a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, that's like a way powerful way to reframe that. And untracked days, badge of honor. Oh, if you give me a minute, I can think of a couple, but I've just realized, like, just speaking differently about some of those things are just a mindset that's different about health. And I mean, just personally, I had done a lot of carnivore and keto, and just really had another misbelief I had before working with you is just this negative belief about carbs and what they were doing to me from all the stuff about keto and carnivore. And although there were some great things going on those diets at different points, like, I really feel like you've helped me view my health more as a lifestyle than a diet. So yeah, would just love to like share like what you've seen working with so many people over the years, and how you've been able to help people shift their mindsets around their health.
Yeah, no, well, first of all, I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate how hard you've worked, because, that's obviously a reflection in telling me I'm heading in the right direction, or helping people in the right direction. So thank you. I really think, just from working with people, I think I've lost track. It's, thousands of people I've at least helped to some degree, if not coached personally, I've done something with. And really, you just start to see, patterns in kind of the same thing. Is people have, beliefs about things, like you said, cheat meals. And it's like, okay, how can we reframe this in a way that's going to be productive, but not get you completely off track? Because that's kind of what a cheat meal is designed to do. It's saying, my diet is so hard that I can't even follow it. I have to cheat on it. It's like, no, we're not following a super strict diet. You're changing your lifestyle to make your diet suit your life, right? So it's really just working with people long term. I've been doing this for 8 years, worked with, like I said, thousands of people. And it just comes down to meeting people where they're at, and just helping them get on the right track. Because everyone can do it. And I've worked with everyone who's, hey, I haven't worked out in 10 years. I really need some help. My diet's horrible, X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, let's meet them where they're at and help them string along a little bit. And then you also have the people who are like, hey, I'm 8 weeks out from a show. I need you to help peak me for this competition, where they're already way up here, shredded. And it's like, okay, let's still meet you a little bit, help you a little bit, and get you to where you want to go. So it's really just finding the happy median of where they're at and how can I get them to where they need to be. And it's kind of the same formula. It's like you just have to tweak it to that person because everyone's different.
What happens? Like, what are just some like tips, or I don't want to call them tricks, but things you've learned along the way working with people, with so many people that maybe have a hard time seeing that, or have a hard, like they're very entrenched in maybe some old language or like a mindset that just isn't really useful to them. What are some ways that you really like help them see it or to get them to step into it?
Yeah, it's really just, I mean, it's the same thing with kind of sales or anything. It's like you have to figure out a way, maybe an analogy, maybe it's an example, maybe, luckily I have a lot of examples to pull from because I've worked with several people who've been in a similar situation. So it's like, okay, maybe coming off carnivore, lost a lot of weight. Let's help incorporate carbs and get them back here. So it's having the experience, first of all, having examples, analogies, and just, plugging and playing with what works for that individual.
Yeah. Well, just real quick, let's say our listener is someone that is in decent shape and they recognize that they want to be more healthy in general. Like, what are just some of the most basic things you would recommend to someone that is looking to improve their health? I know that's super broad, and maybe that's like where we start, right, with a lot of people.
Yep.
Or maybe someone who's even 30 pounds overweight and they're like, hey, what should I do first?
Yep. Yeah. So that's good. And that's, a lot of people obviously have that issue. So, again, it's meet them where they're at. So it's asking questions, figuring out what are you doing right now and how can I get you to where you need to be? So the first thing I would say is, are you tracking your nutrition and, what do your workouts look like? So meet them there. If they're not tracking their nutrition, then I usually use an analogy. Okay, if you're going to do a cross-country road trip, is it going to be easier or harder if you don't look at the gas gauge? Going to be harder, obviously, right? You can do it. You might run out of gas here and there. You might overfuel sometimes, but it's going to be a lot harder than if you just look down. So the first thing, just track your nutrition just for a couple of weeks without changing anything. And then we can make the slow changes that we need to be. Because the last thing we want to do is I want to take your diet and do a 180. No one's going to stick to that. So I'm going to see what you're doing, what you're eating. Like Drew, the first thing is like, okay, you're on carnivore. The last thing I'm going to do is here's 500 carbs a day. There's no way you're going to stick to that. You're going to freak out. You're going to gain a whole bunch of water weight. It's going to be a nightmare. So, okay, let's slowly build the carbs up. Let's slowly pull the protein and fat down and then get you in a place where we can manipulate your body to how you want it to be. And then the same thing with working out. What do your workouts look like now? What does your cardio look like now? How active are you? Where can we make changes and optimize this? Because really, workout, you can get it as complicated as you want. It's actually very simple. Squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, your basic isolation moves. It all works tried and true since work it out began to now. It's just as effective. So it's really just stringing it, making sure it's the right amount of volume, right amount of intensity. And it's just meeting them where they're at, like I said. So.
Yeah, so good. There's so many little nuggets for life and leadership in there, right? Like having a metric to measure.
Right.
And see where you're at. Shifting the mindset from going on a diet to a way of life or a diet that matches my lifestyle. Like that's so good. And not expecting things to shift 180.
Right.
I think a lot of times we even do that, obviously around our health, but a lot of times even with like the people around us or with our business or whatever, or our life, we're like, we expect things to change like that. And it doesn't always seem to be the way that works.
100%.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the people that struggle with their health and fitness, it's usually because, and you see this probably more than anyone, but they try to do a 180, like they haven't worked out in months, and then they are going to hit the gym 6 days a week and sign up for a gym membership and change their entire diet. And then, it just stresses you out and isn't easy.
100%. Yeah, the burnout takes over. That's actually something, Ben, maybe as we wrap up here, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. That you've probably seen a lot of people try to do that, right? And then they end up burning out. What could you say or speak to around like developing almost like an identity of health and fitness versus I'm going to do all these things and get burnt out?
Yeah, so it's about slow, measurable, easy changes that you can do. Think about when you make a change, you have to ask yourself, can I do this for the rest of my life? If the answer is no, you need to tone it down enough. So first things first, if you're not lifting weights at all, start with going to the gym twice a week, doing full body workouts. That's a pretty easy, sustainable change. It takes 2 hours a week. I feel like anyone can find 2 hours a week.
Ben, could you just explain what a full body workout is?
Yeah. Thank you. So essentially you pick one exercise per body part. So I pick a leg exercise, squat, a deadlift, a stiff leg deadlift, a leg press, something like that. A back workout, pull up, row, lat pull down, anything like that. A chest exercise, chest press, a fly, shoulder exercise, a shoulder press, lat, and then maybe arm exercises, triceps and biceps. Just pick one exercise per body part. Literally just start with two sets. You don't have to be like, oh, I have to do it until I can't move again, because the chances of you being like, oh man, this is so hard, I can't be sore for the rest of my life, this is impossible. When everyone brags about their leg days and they're like, I can't walk the next day, this is great, I'm like, you're never going to last long doing fitness if that's your mentality to do that every week, because it is unrealistic. So that every once in a while it's fine, but again, sustainability. So you do full body workouts, 30, 45 to an hour workout twice a week. And then just start with steps. Drew probably knows I'm big on just tracking steps, because that's a measurable, easy thing. If I say, go do an hour of cardio every day, that'll last maybe a day or two, if that, or you'll just look at it and be like, I'm never going to do that. It's impossible. But if I say, hey, take 3 10-minute walks a day, pretty simple. Every time you eat, just go walk for 5-10 minutes. Pretty easy. You're going to add your steps up, and then you can scale from there, right? Once you really hone in towards your goal. Same thing with nutrition. It's like, just start getting more protein. That's the first thing. It's like, we don't need to make this huge 180 flip. Just start getting, you weigh 200 pounds, let's start getting 200 grams of protein. Then we'll start refining all the other, we'll start worrying about carbs and fats and eating less processed foods. That comes in time. But I think the first step, the most important things first, the biggest hurdles. Once you get those, then you can start knocking out some things.
Yeah. So good.
So full body workouts 2 days a week.
Yep.
Track your steps, hit your protein.
That's it. That's
the
big
Super
three
simple.
right there. You do that, you're going to be able to sustain that for forever. And you're going to feel way better, and, you're going to be ahead of 99% of people.
Well, and honestly, like, if that's all someone ever did, it would be massive. Like, it would totally shift their health, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You might not win, the next Olympic Games, but you're going to feel better. You're going to look better inevitably, and you're going to be healthier. You're going to live longer. So
yeah,
just doing those small things will give you, an immensely better life.
Yeah.
And what I've loved too about working with you, Ben, is like realizing, hey, it's okay to have like a cinnamon roll if it's within reason. Like, I can eat that. My daughter made some cinnamon rolls. Yes. I can track it. I can plan it into my day. I can feel really good about it and still hit my numbers and hit my goals. It's like, oh, I thought you had to just torture yourself to like lean out. And that, like, you've helped me see, like, what's been really powerful is like, one, I'm so glad I hate cardio. So when you finally asked me to do 3 days a week, I'm like, what the heck? We've hardly done any this whole time. But to see the progress I've had with mostly just steps and the way I eat. And I was going to the gym pretty regularly, but making some adjustments there. it's just been incredible because I think there's just so much like misinformation about health and what you have to do. And, and I don't even want to speak bad about any, but you see some of these things where I don't know, it's just like so bad, the misinformation out there around health, when it's like really, you can just make it really simple. Like you just said, a couple strength training days a week, hitting your protein, cutting out processed foods and being more active every day. It's like most people can do that.
Right.
Pretty easily.
Right. I think the problem is most of those people are right. They have, some truths, but they just run with it and they just make it so overcomplicated so people will buy into whatever they're trying to sell. And me, I'm just like, it's really simple. Like, cut all that out. Like, having some oversight helps. So, like, obviously having a fitness coach is huge, but really just the 3 things we talked about. It's like anyone can do that. Anyone can make changes and be healthier and have a better life. So
Yeah. And I love that we started with the mindset, because I really feel like that's what removed a lot of the block for people. It's like, okay, I'm just going to choose to view this as like, I want a more healthy lifestyle instead of like, I'm going to start a diet or I'm going to the gym 6 days a week immediately. I think that's huge to then allow people to really like step into those 3 simple in a way that works.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think really what goes into that is like coming back to the leadership thing. It's like, you have to figure out before you even just like, I want to look better. It's like, okay, well, why? You have to find the why. You have to have the reason. And then you can make the small changes and eventually, you're going to hit that goal. But you have to have, your why has to be more powerful than just like, I want to, I just want to be jacked. It's like, okay, well, why?
Yeah.
Maybe
Awesome.
2 last questions for you, Ben.
Sure.
One, how would you want to be remembered as a leader for people? And then 2, like what advice would you give to someone who's maybe beginning in some journey of leadership, whether as a fitness coach or some other area of their life?
Of course. Yeah. I would say I've reflected on this because like I said, I literally thought I was on my deathbed, and it kind of comes down to how will people remember me? And so sometimes I reflect on that. What will my legacy be? And for me, the most important aspect of that leadership and legacy, it comes down to being the best dad possible, because my children, I have the biggest impacts, way more than any, employee or coworker or, coaching client. It comes down to being the best I can be for my children and leaving that legacy. So that's where my leadership goal, my priority, I should say, my leadership priority is to my children. And just being remembered as someone who, I may make mistakes, but I'm always going to achieve my goals, and I'm always going to, love my children. And that's what's most important to me. And then the second part, you said, what was the second question?
Yeah, just what advice would you give someone to maybe who's in a new position as a leader, and how can they show up and be a better leader for people every day?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of cliche and probably, leadership 101, and it's just lead by example. When I look back to how my father was, I know he was one who always preached lead by example. And sometimes I can kind of reserve into my own thing, but I'm like, I'm going to get this down so I can be the example. And whether it's, discipline, whether it's sweeping the floors, with my kids, doing the chores with them, it just comes down to leading by example. And once people buy in and see that, you are who you say you are, that kind of leader, then people are going to trust you and listen to you and really look up to you a lot more.
This has been awesome. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate coming on. And will you share one more time what the name of that documentary is that people can be looking for?
Yeah. So thank you. First of all, I appreciate your guys' time. It's called Stronger Than the Storm. Yeah, we'll see where it winds up. But right now it's just in some film festivals. I actually, with this change of career, I've gotten off social media, so I'm not posting as much, but there is a Stronger Than the Storm movie page. You can go follow and support there and see where it winds up.
Yeah, we'll make sure to leave a link for that so people can check in and see it. And I guess if anyone wants to connect with you in your new journey, what's the best way for them to do that?
I guess just email. I'm not on, like I said, I'm not on social media, so just BP Lawson 37, just your personal email. If you want to buy a home in Nashville, come on through. I'll hook you up.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story, Ben. Really inspiring.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, a lot of great nuggets today, and yeah, for our listener who's been here this whole time, I think there's a lot you can learn from Ben and his journey, and a lot of lessons that can help you live like a leader today. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.